Viewers, good morning Africa, wherever you are. We are looking at the rise from the ashes of the judiciary of the Republic of Kenya. For the last 2 years, since the nullification of elections of 2017, the judiciary of the Republic of Kenya has been on the headlines and in every newspaper worldwide, nationally, regionally, and Africa at large. The nullification of that election brought what we call a dual system of courage of justice.
That the presidential election held on 8th August 2017 was not conducted in accordance with the Constitution and the applicable law, rendering the declared results invalid, null, and void.
The justice that is demanded by civil society, international civil society, and the local civil societies, and the justice demanded by the interest of the nation. Given the two, which one do Kenyans want? Do they want the interest of the nation? In the interest of the nation, President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta decided to go back to campaign in order to show the world that he was able, and he is able, and he was the winner. The campaigns took place, an election was reconducted. For the second time, Uhuru emerged the winner of that election. From then, the judiciary has never been a judiciary for the people of Kenya. It has been a judiciary commanded, supported, equipped logistically by either local NGOs or international NGOs that tell them on what to do, not to do. And above all, the situation of judicial officers themselves being activists. We have seen a number of judges acting like activists on the streets, making decisions that are not in the interest of the judiciary and not in the interest of the country at large. The release of terrorists or alleged terrorists from courts using the law, and then the terrorists return to kill many Kenyans, is one of the factors that has caught our eye. In Africa School of Thought, we believe that Chief Justice Maraga and his entire team, or Chief Justice Maraga, the Deputy Chief Justice, Madam Mwiru, have not done a service for this country. They have misused the powers conferred upon them by the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya to either do politicking or accuse the executive of being political or being a witch hunter against the judiciary. Time and time again, President Uhuru Kenyatta has pumped in money in the judiciary to raise the standards of the employees of the judiciary, to give the judges freedom and welfare that they are able to conduct their affairs without interference. Is it time now for the Kenyans to say we have had enough of a bad judiciary? Is it time now for us to fight and for Africa to rise up? Because we see a lot of shrinkage of constitutionalism being done by the judges. If you look at what the judges in Malawi did, they did it in the morning, they reversed it in the afternoon, they ate it during dinner. Is this what Kenyans want? I leave it to you, Kenyans. Our hopes lie on the judicial service, the new judicial service system that has been put there. And hopefully, and only hopefully, that one day we shall rise from the ashes of corruption. Thank you.
Our destination, ladies and gentlemen, is to tackle the housing challenge, and this was inspired by the reality of our nation, Kenya, today. Based on recent census, our population now stands at 47 million people, of whom today 10 million are urban dwellers. And over 90% of town dwellers today live in rented houses, with approximately 65% of those living in informal settlements. Today we are here as a first step to launch one of our strategic partners projects, which when completed will deliver 8,888 units. And I'm informed that Habitat Heights is the first of many housing projects that the United Nations Office of Project Services and their partners plan to undertake in our country. Indeed, UNOPS is working with Housing Finance to manage and avail low-cost mortgages for our people. Moreover, first-time house owners will be exempt of stamp duty under the Affordable Housing Scheme, in addition to enjoying the doubling of the Home Ownership Saving Plan. We have also waived NEMA and National Construction Authority fees on constructions, and we are seeking various counties to follow suit by waiving their county government development fees in order once again to further reduce the cost to ordinary mwananchi.
Fellow Africans, since 1957, when Ghana gained independence, there has been quite a lot of political, social, economic indicators on the African continent that show that Africa has progressed from pre-independence Africa to post-independence Africa.
Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. From now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
66 years down the road, Africa finds itself with the first country, Ghana, having gained independence. We find ourselves still locked up, controlled, manipulated, instructed, logistically supplied, equipped by foreign powers that dictate our agenda. Africa is endowed with plenty of minerals, resources, good weather. The climate is so favorable for the growth of food enough to sustain us. But we find ourselves in countries where hunger is killing people. Hunger is killing people because most of the people have taken to arms to fight wars, conflicts. Starvation has taken the place of development. In most African countries like Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Nigeria, in Biafra, and north of Nigeria there is Boko Haram. Somalia in the Horn of East Africa, we have taken to conflict instead of development. Development was the key indicator. When Kwame Nkrumah made the first speech that seek ye African political unity, economic development will come automatically, he was right. The events happening in Libya today vindicates Nkrumah, vindicates Nyerere, Sekou Toure, and Nasser, the founding fathers of our Pan-Africanism. The events happening in Central African Republic, in Congo today, as the war of rebels ranges on between the rebel and the rebels and the government and the rebels, vindicates the founding fathers of this revolution. Our independence, therefore, was only on paper. Our independence, therefore, was only in symbols. Our independence also was in signs. Our independence also was in boundaries. That we received our flags, but we never received full independence as by the word independence. Most of the 3/4 of African countries, French-speaking countries, have their budgets being done in Paris. Is that independence? The Paris government or the French government does its budgets based on how much they will get from African countries. Is that independence? Is this the Africa that you want? Is it the Africa that we must look at? Is it the Africa that we shall leave for the future generation? If the answer to you is yes, then so be it. But if the answer is no, you agree with me that this is not the Africa we want to live for the future generation. Our generations and the future generation need to find a legacy. What is the legacy that Africa and African Union will leave for the future generation? The wars ranging in Libya, in South Sudan, in Khartoum, in Mogadishu, in DRC Congo, in Amazonia, in Cameroon, Boko Haram, Mali, in Mauritania, the uprisings in Algeria, all point to one thing, that yes, we are not yet independent. We are still controlled by external forces. Thank you. Viewers, those listening to this tape or this video, I want to bring to your attention that the politics of proxy wars in Africa is becoming real, and it has become a reality. I want to bring to this the attention of the African states that time and time again we have fallen victims of proxy wars. We fight wars that are not ours. We fall in conflicts that are not supposed to be, don't help Africa, and they don't help our countries at all. The proxy war that is in East and Central and the Horn of Africa has been ignited, supported, equipped by France. It has been very real that the French government, quietly through its company called Total Oil, has been searching for resources around the triangle of East and Central Africa and Great Lakes region and the Horn of Africa. The LAPSSET was one of them, which could have been a landmark project for the people of France. They withdrew from it. The Tanga to Mwanza, they made it, they withdrew from it. The search for oil and resources through Total Oil has brought us the dangers of a proxy war in the region. It is therefore very prudent for people of the region to understand the dynamics that we are going through. For example, in Rwanda and the Burundi conflict, there is a proxy war. We are fighting a proxy country has brought us to a war between the two countries, between Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi. There is a proxy war in Congo who is sponsoring a resurgence of rebels that are fighting President Tshisekedi because he was not supported by countries that we know very well. This type of strategy has happened in North Africa, where Libya has been reduced to rebels, where each faction, even the government supported by United Nations, is being bombarded by a rebel called Khalifa Haftar, who is funded by countries that we know. The question of Somalia and the Kenyan maritime presents a challenge, a test case for Africa and East Africa to stand firm and denounce the actions of countries that bring proxy wars and proxy politics in our region. It is therefore my humble submission that for this conflict, for this to end, we must do enough publicity, advocacy around the area to tell and explain to the international community why this problem is going to create an imbalance in the peace in the region, and the regional peace will be affected. It is therefore my humble submission that as a Ugandan whose troops, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers of other many millions Ugandans who are in Somalia, condemn any action by the Somali government to try to resolve issues that should have been resolved amicably as Africans within the African confines. I submit therefore that some of us will go a mile further to do now, from now onwards, to expose, to show the challenges of these countries that make us fight a proxy war in Africa. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you. Fellow Africans, I took this petition to the court in order to stop any future usage of falsehood and false documents, procured witnesses of the Waki Commission. I took this petition to the court 4 years ago in order to make sure that the Chief Prosecutor of International Criminal Court does not use this evidence anytime in the future, whether tomorrow or 10 years to come, to refer to this evidence because the evidence was fake. It is with this dismay and with this courage that I took to go to court in Kenya to seek a judicial review and to redeem the credibility of both those accused and the victims of this catastrophe that occurred in Kenya, that I decided to seek to expunge this report from the reports and the statute books of Kenya. It is unfortunate that the 3 judges in Kenya, whom I will name now, Judge Kanyi Kimondo, Judge Aburil, and Judge Onyengo, all of them sat down and gave very silly, flimsy, prudish, sardonic ruling against our petition. I want to tell the Kenyans that I have done my best. I want to be on record that should this thing reappear again, don't call me. Should it reappear again, don't say I never told you. Should the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court use this fake evidence again against Kenyans, don't say I did not tell you. My role was to go and remove these obnoxious toxins from the books of the Republic of Kenya. I therefore want to tell the world that my torrid road, a long road that I've taken in search for this envelope, has ended in Kenya so far. But I want to announce that Kenya is not the only state party in international law. Kenya is not the only state party. I will in future, very soon, detail to you which other state party I'm going to seek this envelope to be expunged and to be made public to the people of the world. I want to thank you all. I want to tell you that a detailed document which is entitled My Long Road, Torrid Road to Work Envelope will be found on www.panafricanforumltd.com. You can read it, you can dissect, you can see the days, the long road, what I took, what I did, referenced, well documented, and may God help you that at one time somebody in Kenya will stand up to say thank you very much.
A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Good Morning Africa. Together with me is my co-host, none other than Dr. David Matanga himself. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, you haven't been in the Good Morning Show for a while now.
For a while, yes.
So our viewers are happy to have you here today.
Yes, thank you very much. And good morning, Africa. Good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for watching us and continuing to watch us wherever you were in Tripoli, in Abuja, in Casablanca, Rabat, Accra, DRC, Congo, Rwanda, good morning. Good morning wherever you were in Dar es Salaam, Cape Town. Good morning in Harare. Good morning in Maputo, South Africa, Cape Town. Good morning. I am still in a bit of shock about Africa. And that's why my mood is not as it is. Africa worries me. And with me, of course, she has introduced me, but I welcome her also to the show.
Thank you.
This is a different show that we are going to conduct this morning. We want to go country by country to find out what happened. We shall start with Kenya. It will take the biggest chunk of our time. The events, what went wrong. Does Africa listen? Do they listen to advice? Are we reactive or we are proactive? Are we proactive? This disease is coming. How prepared are we in Africa? Do African leadership mind about the citizens? Do citizens think about Africa? Do they help their governments to achieve certain aims? Why do we create wars? Why do you create an army that kills your own people? What went wrong in Africa? What happened to Africa? What has made Africa look exactly like a black continent? I would even go further to query, why are we black? Is it what has caused us a problem? Because the rest of the continents, at least there are some few things that happen there, but they are prepared. They work on them. They are open. They have moved. They have industries. They have social contract. What about us in Africa? We seem to be talking forward, backwards, forward, backwards. We don't talk forward all the way. 67 years of independence of the first country in Africa. We still don't have stability. We still don't have pumped water, clean water. We still don't have electricity reaching every person. What went wrong in Africa? 67 years after independence, we still import food, aid, flour, maize, meals, oil for some parts of Africa. What went wrong in Africa? 67 years of independence. We still slaughter people. We kill people in Mogadishu. We kill people in Somalia. The Somali government looks like it is a satellite parasite government. It is not an African government. What went wrong in Africa? "67 years, we haven't even prepared one hospital that can cater for an emergency. We don't have even a fire brigade motor vehicle. Not because we don't have the money, but we have clobbered the money that was supposed to buy the motor vehicle for fire in case a plane lands on the people in a city. 67 years of independence. We have fire brigade coming without water and the liquid to silence or to stop, to extinguish the fire. The vehicle arrives and the driver says, we came but we don't have a vehicle. What went wrong with Africa? What went wrong? 67 years of independence after the first country got independence, Ghana. We still have Fulani herdsmen killing Igbo men, slaughtering them. What went wrong in Africa? 67 years again of independence. We have Paul Biya slaughtering Amazonians because they speak English. Their crime is speaking English. 67 years of independence. We have a president in Bujumbura, Burundi, not able to go out of his country because he fears the seat will be taken. What went wrong with Africa? 67 years of independence in Kenya. We still have headlines like the one Miriam is going to read. What happened to Africa? What can we do to change this direction of Africa? That's why I've decided this Friday I will not talk about anything else, but I want to find what happened to Africa. We wait until we are struck with a point, with a problem, is when we start to look for solutions. Many countries in the world are today prohibiting, putting measures. Last week, I wrote a very fantastic article. I hope, Miriam, you have picked it. You brought it up. If it is not, the production team can bring that article. If you read the article, I wrote candidly. Myself, I penned it with pain and anguish and agony. The suffering of the people of Africa. In case the coronavirus arrives here, what went wrong with Africa? We are seeing signs of coronavirus springing up in several countries. How prepared are we? What's wrong with Africa? We see in Nigeria, a state, yesterday we were talking and Nigerians bought someone to switch off our line, our electricity. But we are back with now our generator. You can try another method that you'll use. We see Nigeria, a biggest economy of Africa, has collapsed itself to the worst economy in Africa. What went wrong with Africa and in Africa? When you see the people of South Sudan, after signing the agreement on Saturday, they are squabbling over who should run the oil docket. What went wrong with us in Africa? Is there anything we can do without a struggle, a squabble? Is there anything we can do without killing each other? We see in Kenya, the BBI that was to bring healing has been hijacked by politicians who have made it a habit to make it a political movement instead of a healing movement. What went wrong with Kenya? We see a majority Senate leader called Murkomen, Senator Murkomen in Kenya, attacking the president every minute. What the president says, he counteracts. What went wrong with Kenya? What killed Kenya? Where are the manners? Where's the respect? Who destroyed our morale? who killed our morals, who has destroyed our morality. We see bishops drinking wine up to morning until 8, then they come to preach. What went wrong in Africa? We see bishops struggling in Uganda over property with their wives. Cases in Uganda of bishops struggling over mercantile capitalism are higher than anywhere on the continent of Africa. Because they have commercialized the religion in Uganda to the extent that every bishop who is high must dress in a new suit every Sunday to preach to the people who have no suit, who have no shirt, who have no salt, who have no soap, who have nothing to wear. What happened in Africa? Do you notice that our bishops wear the basic cloth in order to preach to us, even telling us that look at my linen. Look at my linen. I have brought my linen. It is here. Silk. Look at the way I flew all the way from Lagos a few days ago. Look at my jet, private jet. I am sister so and so, preaching with a battalion of men dressed in the same cloth. What went wrong in Africa with Africa? We see children dying in Sudan, South Sudan. The men who are supposed to stop the war have stopped the war. But instead of them looking for solutions on how the children died, they are looking for solutions on how we shall sell the oil. That is another problem where trouble will spark from. What went wrong in Africa? Miriam, a leader of opposition, a leader of majority of a government of Republic of Kenya, insults Uhuru Kenyatta every day, every morning, every afternoon. Even when Kenyatta, President Uhuru Kenyatta has done the most grateful thing of the city, of Nairobi city, to rescue it under very serious circumstances. Extraordinary measures need extraordinary courage to take on the governor to rescue the city from the hands of mafia cartels who had taken over leadership in the city, breaking down the rule of law, the rule of social contract, the rule of economic empowerment, the rule of sanity, where insanity had prevailed, with the governor showing us his blings, buying diamonds in an open shop when people cannot have drainage water going out, sewage water coming back to the house for drinking. What went wrong with Africa? What went wrong in Africa? When we see elections approaching in Uganda, and all political parties are told not to campaign. When you start a campaign to sensitize your people, you are beaten. What went wrong with Africa? You are beaten, literally beaten. The people are not allowed to come to even ask their constituents, other political parties. But the main party says, we are holding an election. What type of election is that? What went wrong with Africa? What went wrong with Africa when you look at Zimbabwe? You lose an election. You go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court upholds the election. Says although there were few mishaps of this nature, they did not mar the entire exercise of an election. Then 2 years down the road, you still say you are the leader who won the election, yet the Supreme Court has ruled that you lost that election. What happened? What went wrong with Africa? These are things happening in Africa, Miriam. These are the things happening in Africa. They're happening in Kenya. The stories today in Kenya, what went wrong with our media? What went wrong with our media? We are here. We are the media. What do we do? The negativity that we deliver, the lack of research, the lack of data investigative information. You see pictures of locusts coming and the people are fighting locusts. This is Uganda, I believe.
That is actually Nanyuki.
Is in Nanyuki.
They're in Laikipia County.
In Laikipia. The picture, I think can bring it. Yet we have helicopters. We fly helicopters every day. Nobody can sacrifice 5 planes to go and fight the locusts. To help, to put pipes so that they can fight the locusts. What went wrong? Elsewhere in the world, everybody is careful on coronavirus. We seem to be having double standard talk about this disease. And yet it is real. It is killing people. We seem to have double standards as Africans. Do we remove our students? Do we remove our people abroad? Do we leave them? Uganda says it will remove them. Then it comes back and says they will stay there. South Africa removes them. Because we don't have facilities to bring them to. Where do you bring them to? The best is for these students to stay where they are, where there is medicine, which can be able to control, to be cured. Hopefully they are not being eaten or cut to pieces. Because the type of pictures and the videos that we are seeing coming from that city, where people are forcibly being carried to be executed, if this is true, what went wrong with Africa? South Africa is removing its own nationals, sent a plane. It wants its nationals out because South Africa has facilities. We all fly to South Africa to sustain our hearts, our kidneys, our livers. But we don't want to make one brick that can serve a hospital in Kenya. We eat the money. We corruptly take the money that was meant for projects, then turn around to molest the same government that we have eaten money from. In Kenya, what has killed wrong, what has gone wrong with Kenya is corruption. And we want to thank President Uhuru Kenyatta for having fought for the first time in Kenyan history, having come out to fight corruption. Mr. President, don't give up. Fight. The people who are corrupt are near you. Fight them. Tell them. They are now sitting in the back seat and sending their messengers to insult you every morning. Mulukomen cannot insult the president without the order of the deputy president. Ukweli isemwe. On Twitter, the deputy president gave a different message. Said it was a decision made by the government to take over Nairobi. At night, on the 3rd floor, somewhere in the house, in a hotel, instructions were given to molest President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. President, please, use the same method you used to take power away from Sonko. Take it away from this deputy leader, away from the leader of majority. You can't be a leader of majority of this country, of a Senate. Then you insult the president who gave you the powers to be a leader of the Senate. As if that president has no friends. He has friends like us. If he's not speaking, we shall speak. And now Murkomen, we have spoken. Murkomen should not forget the testimonies he wrote to ICC to fix Ruto. He has forgotten. And they have forgotten and they jumped on that. And they want to attack other people. Yet he was the one leading Reinberger, Ambassador Reinberger and others, and of Public Society Foundation of George Soros, writing statements on ICC to fix Ruto in particular. And another one. Their statements are with us. We speak with no facts. If they say they are not there, we publish them. Or we go to court, we shall show them. Why should Murkomen, a leader of majority of the Senate, of a ruling party, confuse Kenyans?
I think it's very confusing there, Dr.
Miriam, over to you.
Yes, a very important point.
Let me have my coffee.
You're raising, because you've seen in democracies across the world, when you are a leader of the majority and you're representing the ruling party there, then you're supposed to be advancing the government's position and communicating that to the parliament. So what we see here today, even in other democracies, I think is very shocking. And usually the standard procedure will be, if you're not in agreement with this government, if you do not want to be the leader of majority and to be speaking on behalf of the government, because essentially that is what you're supposed to be doing, then I think the honorable thing to do is perhaps even forfeit your position if you're not able to carry out your duties that you are mandated and according to the constitution, and your responsibilities are very clear. Same as to the vice president, and just when you look at whatever is happening across the world, look at, say, somebody like Pence, you hardly hear anything he has to say. And however bad Trump or however grave the matter is, always he has to support what his boss is saying. And not just that, but across any democracies in the world. But in Kenya here, we seem to be having different, power plays, and so points of power. And so you wonder, okay, so who is the head of state and who are below him and who is supposed to be giving, because there seems to be the one to rise to be at the level of their boss, which is very confusing. So the leader of majority and how especially he's been handling this matter in regards to Sonko, the Nairobi County government working together now, or some of very important functions being run now by the national government, which will start on the 25th of March. He was supposed to go to State House, talk to, in fact, that message was supposed to have communicated to him, but because of the manner in which he's been handling government business at the Senate, I think it was difficult. But he will be the one who will be advancing the position of the government in the Senate. And if he feels that he cannot do that because of whatever reason that he has, then I think the right thing to do is leave that position to somebody who can actually do the functions that comes with that privilege of being the leader of majority in Senate.
What went wrong in Africa? When you see the difficulties of a leader of majority who is supposed to safeguard the interests of the government. He instead peddles words against President Uhuru Kenyatta. Then you sit back and say, what went wrong with Africa? And he can't resign. If you are fed up with President Uhuru Kenyatta's policies, walk away.
Forfeit that position.
Yes, leave to be a leader of majority and go and be a senator and start opposing. But you cannot be a leader of majority in the Senate where your speaker has gone to witness the handover ceremony. Then you oppose the speaker. These people, where did they come from, surely? Who brought these guys to where they are? At times I sit back and say, what happened? How did we get there? Jubilee as a party, I'm not a member but a friend, a supporter of Jubilee Party. I thought their policies was to make a united party with ideology. That ideology could deliver Kenya to a... Ruto was all the time telling us we need a party with ideology, equivalent to South Africa. What has happened of that talk? Because what we are seeing here are associates wounding the president. Nobody is stopping them. You know, the worst thing is they are scaring people even to the cheapness. They don't want people to go to Meru for this.
Yeah, for tomorrow's the BBI.
Some people are writing to say patient was far. Look at that. What type of people are these? Where did they come from? Which planet? Do we have people or we have zombies?
I think that there's a lot of confusion, especially in when it comes to with our politicians. They don't understand. If you have been elected or you have been nominated or selected to lead your party, you are supposed to do that. You're supposed to be advancing your party's interest and your leader's position on certain matters. You are supposed to be doing that, and that is a standard in all democracies across the world. So this hybrid thing, you want to, sometimes you don't even know who is the government, who is in the ruling party and who is in opposition, because you find that now it's even the opposition who are even supporting more, some things that some positions of the government, and we see the people who are supposed to be advancing this, they're not able. What I'm just thinking, instead of Mr. Murkomen feeling that he cannot do that, if he feels he cannot do that and he does not want to advance the interest of the party, of the Jubilee Party and the policies and represent his government in Senate and advance the government position in Senate, I think the most honorable thing is for him to step down from that position and let somebody else come in and lead that, because you cannot insist on being that and you're not able to meet the requirements that comes with that, that even is enshrined in our constitution. There's a reason as to why it was important to have the Senate majority leader as well as Senate minority leader, because these positions are not just for the sake of it. They have some meaning behind it and some functionalities that come with them. So if you feel you cannot represent your government because you feel your position, what you feel and what you think is not in line with the government that you're representing, now the best thing that you can do is just do Kenyans a favor and stop with the confusion. Just step down and allow somebody else who can actually, advance the party's positions and the party's policies in Senate or any other leadership capacity, so that this confusion can stop.
Yesterday, Miriam, this news just coming in is that a plane flying FLY 540 carrying Tullow Oil employees has landed in Lokichang.
Lokichang, yes.
Turkana County. Mm-hmm. And the picture of the plane, I think the picture of the plane, the production team can bring it. We can see workers escaping, running out of the plane. It has just crash landed.
But nobody has been hurt.
We haven't seen the reports of people being hurt yet. But I think, let's pray nothing has happened which would force us to say otherwise. But a plane carrying members of Talua Oil workers crash landed in Lokicha in the northern part of Kenya, where it was carrying Talua Oil workers. And here the plane is on the ground. I have sent it to you, Mr. Production team can work to bring that plane. Crash landed. It is on the ground. Lokicha being a flat area. I think it was. There you are. A 540 plane just landed, and you can see people jumping out. You can see scattered some of the bags or the emergency exit, and it seems there are not very many people who were inside there, but we don't know how far it is. That is Africa again. These 540 planes.
Somebody needs to, the Kenya Aviation
Authority.
Why do we not have such incidents in KQ?
There was a plane that was carrying cargo from Eldoret. Which plane was that? Which even the tires got out?
This small plane. Somebody needs to. The Kenya Aviation Authority should take this matter and investigate.
Yes.
Even the condition of these planes.
Of the planes, yes.
Sometimes they buy them and they've already been used in other countries and they're already old. So when they come here, it's a risk.
Even if you give me money to travel in 540, I'll drive. Yeah, I don't drive in them. I'm not campaigning anybody. Continue traveling.
I'm also scared with it.
Yes.
With the one inch.
I'd rather drive to Kisumu.
To and fro 6 hours.
Yes. 6 hours.
But Kisumu we have KQ and
Chapija,
so it's safe.
If KQ is not there,
it is there.
I don't go.
KQ is.
Thank you very much, viewers. Yes.
That's an unfortunate incident, but we have not received any reports of anybody losing their lives or getting hurt. So we hope that it continues like that. But appears our majority of the passengers in that plane were able to escape without getting hurt.
Yes. Another breaking news that while we are on air, we have quite a lot of things coming in, and while we are there, things continue to happen. Mandera East MP Omar has now asked, I've now asked the Minister of Defense, CS Monica Juma, to explain the Mandera stay of Jubaland Minister Abdi Rashid Janan after escaping from Somalia. So what does this help? You see, what went wrong with Somalia?
As we look at what went wrong with
Africa.
Yes.
Somalia, the president of Somalia is not a Somali. He's an American. He's a Somali by face and hair, but an American by heart. Mr. Faramijo does not believe in the people of Somalia. Mr. Faramijo, if you look at the statement, you saw the statement that they have written this morning, Somalia, complaining about Kenya interfering with their internal affairs.
Is it in regards to that minister?
I don't know whether it is the minister or whatever.
And people seek political asylum all the time if your life is.
But if the man has run away
from prison,
from whatever it is, doesn't matter, and declared asylum, and they're gone to UN and they say my life is in danger,
then Kenya has a right to provide him with security.
Yes, by international convention,
yes.
Geneva Convention.
You cannot send him back.
We don't have extradition warrant with Kenya, with Somalia to extradite Somalis. Otherwise, we could have extradited even President Faramijo, whose house is here. We could have extradited Hassan Harie.
Hold on. Mr. Farmajo has a house
Yes,
in Nairobi.
Farmajo has a house here.
Where in Runda?
I know it. I don't want to
somewhere.
tell it for security reasons.
Okay.
Because people could go and break the windows. So, we wanted to talk the truth. Look at that letter. Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Somalia. What went wrong with you?
What? The federal government of Somalia.
Yes, Kenya that has sacrificed so much to defend, clean your bad things. Do you know, one thought came to me this morning. Isn't Somalia sponsoring Al-Shabaab against Kenya?
Let me tell you, especially some developments that have been coming from the international community.
Exactly.
So now the U.S. Is sort of writing off some of the debt Somali has. IMF is now giving Somali some money 30 years after they've not been working with Somali government. They lifted sanctions on another group that was initially was thought to be supporting terrorism activities in Somalia, but they lifted sanction against that group, and of course they refused Kenya's request to proscribe Al-Shabaab. So when you look at the turn of events and what is really, really happening, for anybody with a critical thinking and who understands the dynamics of this region's politics and now the oil in Somalia, I think, we have a lot to think about.
Thank you very much. What kind of this TV talking about African countries' challenges? We shouldn't talk about them? Is this one from James Rui Majok? This must be from Sudan. South Sudan.
I think maybe that means he's a new viewer, and perhaps
a new viewer maybe.
Maybe he was just expressing his
Thank
joy,
you very much. We are talking about the challenges that face Africa.
Yes.
That Majok, even as you speak now, you don't have a bed in case coronavirus breaks in Juba. Where will you go? Maybe you'll throw yourself in the River Nile. Are we prepared? No. Okay, if you look at Somalia, that letter speaks vermin, a lot of venom, a lot of insult to a country that has helped them to mold themselves to where they are. It doesn't look like Africa. It doesn't. What went wrong with us? Miriam?
I think a lot of things went wrong, especially after now 67 years this year after the first country in Africa got its independence, that is Ghana. And I think after we diverted from the initial dreams and aspirations from our forefathers, then we thought that we could try other things. And a new crop of leadership after the founding fathers came into Africa, where we saw a lot of coups happening and a lot of different things happening. And I think we diverted from the dream that a person like Kwame Nkrumah had of a united Africa, of an Africa free of disease, ignorance, and hunger. And that became a rallying call to every African country that was getting independence after that. But it seemed to have gone out of that. And now we have things like corruption being the order of the day. We have normalized corruption in this continent in the manner in which it's outstanding. When you look at the countries who are advancing, a country like Singapore was at par with Kenya about 50 years ago, and other African countries. And now you compare the GDPs and how far those countries have developed, and then you wonder, where did we really, really go wrong? And are we able to go back to the drawing board and find our way back to how we can actually develop and how Africa can change? Because we have to, and if you don't, then there are no hopes for the coming generations. And so corruption, Doctor, I think that is the place where Africa has gone completely wrong, and unfortunately, even the citizens of this, very wonderful continent, we've become very complacent. And so, when you see President Uhuru Kenyatta coming out very strongly in the war against corruption, nobody wants to hear it, and now he has created more enemies because of his stand against corruption. So, because corruption is supposed to be normalized, and so I think that is the thorn in the flesh that is eating in every public Kofan. We continue to have very poor health facilities. We continue to have very low quality education, because the money that is supposed to be going and funding these things, people just take and eat and benefit themselves and their families, go to expensive schools at the expense of a larger, public. And so that's where we are here today. Corruption is what has made Africa go completely wrong. And I don't know if you'll be able to trace our way back to doing things the right way.
Coronavirus, only 11 beds are ready.
At Kenyatta National Hospital.
On the 11. Eh? So what went wrong with us?
And Kenyans, have been...
And then I want my people, the production team, to bring this picture on the star of locusts. One man chasing locusts, that they have actually become a cloud on him.
I don't know how successful that chase was. I don't know if he was able to chase them all completely, but this is something that, is now a plague across Africa, not just in Kenya. It's now even in Uganda, some parts of, it's getting near South Africa and also Tanzania as well. So I don't know why they chose Africa particularly.
Look at that. This is a very courageous farmer in Kenya, in Nanyuki, where locusts have come to invade us. Locusts also have lacked food wherever they stay. So what has happened? All the food, people are interested in oil exploration instead of growing food. Super countries are interested in sending money to moon. You see, we have disrupted with God's arrangement. Me, I don't believe in America and Russia and other countries saying they are sending equipment in the space. God has not told you to go beyond a certain space.
He did not intend for us to
Yes,
be there.
there are certain things that God hid away from us, knowing very well that if we had them on a daily basis, we could perish in a day. For example, a sun. If the sun came closer here, all of us will burn.
Yes.
So we have gone up in the moon. We have stations up there. Now these locusts came all the way from Pakistan, that area of running away from the cold, because they usually stay around there. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, they are sweeping through across Africa, the tropics, not going even in the Sahara Desert yet.
There's nothing to eat in this.
Yes.
Desert, yes.
So there's something wrong with Africa, with us. What went wrong? First, we were taken as slaves. We willingly sold our fellow brothers. We highest bidder, highest buyer. We are taken to Americas, to the Caribbeans as slaves. Now, after all this, the slavery got down, finished. We have not changed the behavior. We still have that slavery syndrome, that everything you must look at the West. What have the British said? What have Americans said?
It's very interesting, and we're also grappling with things like, Africa being one of the richest continents in the world with good soil and good weather. Doctor, you mentioned something in the beginning there when you're doing the introduction. We still have a huge population of, say, people in Zimbabwe who half of the population rely on relief food that comes from countries that don't even farm. Do you know how shameful that is for a continent?
It's indeed a very big shame, Miriam. It's a very big shame. And the earlier we shrug off this shame, the better. If you read that, and then you read about what is taking place, I'm just trying to get off from the usual hearing that Mr. Harvey is the chairman of LSK.
I was waiting for you to mention that.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't want to hear about that. But I think we have something wrong. What went wrong?
In Kenya.
Ye ni Kenya. Yes.
He was, yesterday.
Okay, we move on. Another topic, let's bring Nigeria.
Yes, from where we left it yesterday. And then
Nigeria, with a population of 200 million people. This nation has never seen peace. It has seen peace, but because the international community doesn't pick what they go through, other communities go through in Nigeria, we are told that it is one of the most beautiful, prosperous countries in Africa. But in Nigeria, what is happening there is a pure genocide. In the north, the Boko Haram terrorists are eating people. In the central part and southeastern part of Nigeria, the Fulani herdsmen are also slaughtering the Igbo, wiping them out. So I don't know what we can do, but we seem to be at crossroads.
Yeah, and I think Nigeria is becoming a country that is worrying the whole of Africa. The things that are happening in that country, unfortunately, don't stay in that country. They seem to be spreading across. When you see things like even theft and a white-collar theft, you see a lot of the hackers and people like that who still even...
They even have a school of corruption.
The fraudsters.
Yes, they train how to do corruption. So what went wrong with us, Africa?
So criminal activities in that country. I think it's a country that Africa now should start talking very loudly, especially the insecurity that is happening in Nigeria, spreading very fast. And yesterday, unfortunately, we were not able to finish the show, but a lot of things that we were talking about that our viewers were able to resonate with, and the insecurity that has been caused by Boko Haram and President Buhari's laxity in the manner in which he's handling Boko Haram is something that Africans need to stand up and speak about, because that is not just a problem for Nigerians, it is a problem that is spreading in other African countries. And so the rest of us feel very unsafe because what is happening there in Nigeria. So we have to speak up.
So thank you very much. I think you have some African news?
I do.
Yes. Bring them on.
All right. So what is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo is that the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo is set to sign a peace deal with the leaders of an armed militia that's been active in the northeast of the country for nearly 20 years. The Patriotic Resistance Front was a key player in the conflict in the Ituri region that left tens of thousands dead in a 4-year period from 1999 until 2003. A Congolese government negotiator told the BBC that the group demands include an amnesty of former combatants, and also more than 1,000 of them are waiting in camp for an agreement to be signed. So, Doctor, now we see the DR, Mr. Tshisekedi, is trying to get an agreement, sign an agreement with the militia. Is it the way to go? Because I saw also Mali president is saying now he wants to call the jihadists to the table to have discussions. We will not be encouraging more militia activities, because they know the end of the day, when they give a hard time to the government will be forced into talking to them and legitimizing some of their illegal activities. Should we encourage more talks with militia, or just come on hard? Like the way Kenya has been coming on hard on say the Mombasas, Pwani Si Kenya. You remember the group, and then the other one from Mount Elgon. What is the way of solving this insecurity in terms of militia and extremist groups here in Africa? Is it by bringing them to the table, or just going very hard on them?
I think we need to look at two things. The Americans have shown us a way. One of the ways is that they can talk to Taliban. We are in trouble. You saw some article this morning saying Somali government could be the one sponsoring Al-Shabaab.
Somali government.
Against Kenya, yes.
Possible.
It's possible. There is a possibility. They are doing it. Because at the moment, the relationship between Kenya and Somalia
frosty.
is at the lowest ebb. It can be possible. We have a lot that hotels, some targeted
I saw their last.
installations running around social media. We have a problem.
We do have a problem. We do have a serious problem.
So there we are.
And also in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe's military commanders have told President Emmerson Mnangagwa to step down or risk another coup, which is simmering with the army's middle ranks. A former cabinet minister, Jonathan Moyo, claims in an
No, that is a propaganda for Moyo.
for Moyo.
Yeah.
He's saying
Moyo is a propagandist. That thing came a few weeks ago, a few months. Some of us who are privy to President Emerson is not correct. Who are privy to Chiwenga and who talk to these generals is not correct. They don't. There is nothing like that. That is dismissed as a hoax, a very big hoax. It's a wishful thinking of Jonathan Moyo, who has molested many Zimbabweans and many Africans, including myself, because he was part of the problem that I had in Zimbabwe in 2004. And now today he's in exile, where he has been given a cover by the United Nations. Yet he wanted to finish us. At that time, when you tell Moyo that I'm a refugee, and please don't take me this way, he wanted us to be taken back to Uganda. But as to whether this information is correct or not, it is not. It's a fabrication of Jonathan Moyo to incite people, the middle-aged Zimbabweans, to read and have this content about
what is
the
happening
government.
about
That's
the government.
it. Is causing a state of despondency.
Those are very serious
Yes.
claims.
A state of despondency, so that people stand up and fight. So in the fighting, he will be pleased. The government that he fears most will be gone. Yeah, that's what Moyo is doing. Yeah.
So the latest from South Sudan is that the U.S. State Department has said that it is too early to consider lifting arms sanctions imposed on South Sudan, even though the leaders formed a unity government this month. This came after regional leaders and President Salva Kiir called for lifting of sanctions against individuals. So the U.S. has said
They want to use the arms for what? Regional leaders are calling for lifting sanctions, arms sanctions. You want arms to go to South Sudan, surely?
For what?
For what?
Yes. Well, you
Let
don't
the
even
peace hold fast.
We don't even have the army unified.
Yes.
One side might
They should have asked for boots and shoes and clothes for the
uniform,
army,
yes.
not arms.
So it's too early.
Yeah, too early.
So we support the U.S. Position on this matter, and also the army has released about 15 child soldiers now. Remember the ones that had been recruited? Apparently they were there in the camps.
Yes.
Children less than 15 years. Can you imagine? A 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old. But now they've been given back to UNICEF. In Juba there. And so also some news from Somalia is that the World Bank on Thursday said it is normalizing relations with the federal government of Somalia after 30 years. The bank noted that Somalia government's strong record of fiscal, political, social and economic reforms in recent years in making the move. News of the World Bank's move came just days after the International Monetary Fund announced it had secured sufficient financing pledges to provide comprehensive debt relief to Somalia. More than 100 IMF member countries have pledged to provide $334 million in financing. And then we go to Cameroon, where Cameroonian opposition leader who was jailed for 9 months for organizing and participating in an unauthorized protest has said he will organize more marches if need arises. Professor Maurice Kamto, chairman of the opposition Cameroon Renaissance Movement, was welcomed by a huge crowd of supporters in the country's economic hub Douala on Wednesday, following his return from a 1-month European and American tour. Professor Kamto returns to the country at a time where rights organizations have demanded investigations over the February 14th killings of the English-speaking regions. More than 32 people, most of them children and women, were killed in a village in the Anglophone region. And also now the African Union says it plans to send 3,000 troops to the Sahel region, where international and regional forces are struggling to contain Islamist militants. And the head of the AU's Peace and Security Commission, Ismail Chergul, told the AFP news agency that the deployment would last for 6 months. But there are things that are not very clear because it is not clear which countries will provide troops or who will fund the operations of the AU there. So that is not very clear.
So, send the troops to Sahel where? The entire Sahel?
I don't know. And then they still don't even know which countries will give
Why did
the
they
troops.
wait for so long?
That was my question. That is my question. Why are they still waiting for so long before they can bring Buhari to account in regards to Boko Haram? What are they still doing? Quiet and being very passive about this matter.
I think let's take a briefer. When we come back, we want to look at some of the funny stories of the week, and then we see what we can do about it. Let's take a short break, and then we come back. Fellow Africans, I took this petition to the court in order to stop any future usage of falsehood and false documents, procured witnesses of the Waki Commission. I took this petition to the court 4 years ago in order to make sure that the Chief Prosecutor of International Criminal Court does not use this evidence anytime in the future, whether tomorrow or 10 years to come, to refer to this evidence because the evidence was fake. It is with this dismay and with this courage that I took to go to court in Kenya to seek a judicial review and to redeem the credibility of both those accused and the victims of this catastrophe that occurred in Kenya, that I decided to seek to expunge this report from the reports and the statute books of Kenya. It is unfortunate that the 3 judges in Kenya, whom I will name now, Judge Kanyi Kimondo, Judge Aburil, and Judge Onyengo, all of them sat down and gave very silly, flimsy, prudish, sardonic ruling against our petition. I want to tell the Kenyans that I have done my best. I want to be on record that should this thing reappear again, don't call me. Should it reappear again, don't say I never told you. Should the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court use this fake evidence again against Kenyans, don't say I did not tell you. My role was to go and remove these obnoxious toxins from the books of the Republic of Kenya. I therefore want to tell the world that my torrid road, a long road that I've taken in search for this envelope, has ended in Kenya so far. But I want to announce that Kenya is not the only state party in international law. Kenya is not the only state party. I will in the future very soon detailed to you which other state party I'm going to seek this envelope to be expunged and to be made public to the people of the world. I want to thank you all. I want to tell you that a detailed document which is entitled My Long Road, Torrid Road to Work Envelope will be found on www.panafricanforumltd.com. You can read it, you can dissect, you can see the days, the long road, what I took, what I did, referenced, well documented, and may God help you that at one time somebody in Kenya will stand up to say thank you very much. Fellow Africans, every time we are challenged on matters of importance, there is always a path for redemption. The only thing that Kenya needs at the moment is redemption. It's a redemption strategy that can create a coexistence of all the people, all the tribes, all regions, and all shades of opinions. Challenges come at an hour where a country is on a test. Test runs are always the most crucial points. That's where experiments collapse. Kenya is not an experiment. Kenya is a nation that has existed for 56 years. The challenges, therefore, should not make us hate each other. These challenges should unite us, should unite the people of Kenya to push forward an agenda, to follow their president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, in delivering the agenda for a better Kenya. A better Kenya will produce a better East Africa. A better East Africa will produce a better Africa. The challenges, the obstacles that come amongst us are many, but we can overcome them through discussion, a wider range of discussion, wider disagreements to agree and disagree, to agree again and disagree to disagree. But we should not form clubs, units, militias, hatred of that nature that can take us to the history. Germany today is Germany because it doesn't want to go to the path of the history. Germany goes to the path of development. Over 70 years ago, Germany was at war with the entire world. Today, it is on the path of resolving some of the problems that come. I want us to stand in the place of Germany and look forward and backwards. See what we can do here, but not yearn for what is in Rome. What is in Rome is safeguarded, but in Sicily, which is Kenya, we need to build a foundation for the younger generation that we are going to live here today. The many who have no employment, the poverty, the ignorance, the diseases that kill the people of Africa, we need to find a modium of operation. Modus operandi, the only modus operandi on this is a united, peaceful Kenya. A Kenya united by values of respect and adherence to the rule of law. A Kenya without schemes of elimination or fiction of elimination or murders written by themselves. A Kenya without any hatred against the president. A Kenya that supports the constitutional roots that the 2010 constitution of yours brought. That is how Africa will rise and shine again. Thank you.
We must give ourselves a different political template if we are truly to prosper and not be dragged down every single day by never-ending squabbles. Every so often, I believe, a nation must come together. We in Kenya have done so in Lancaster in the 1960s, leading to the Lancaster Consensus. We did so in the 80s, leading to the removal of Section 2A. We also did the same in 2008. And I believe it is time now also for a new consensus. And this is the aim and objective of the BBI process. In this process of renegotiation, no voice will be wrong, and all must be heard. The process must be inclusive, and it should spell, fellow Kenyans, an end of ethnic majoritarianism, and I believe an end to the winner-take-all politics. Fellow Kenyans, we are on a path, I believe, to end the cycle of election crises, and that is the only way we can win our battle of economic prosperity. And I want to assure all Kenyans, for me, I am not against any single person, but I am for 47 million Kenyans to take the next step forward.
Conflicts in Africa have become the daily occurrence. Daily occurrences in many countries, in the sense that almost every African country, apart from the few, there is tension. One wonders where this tension at times comes from. Some of it comes from elections, a manufactured election, a disputed election results. Some come from territory. Some are terrorist-based, like that of Somalia and Boko Haram. Some are because of regime change, purely sponsored by external forces. But 95 to 96% of conflicts in Africa occur through the sponsorship of external darker forces that would like to benefit out of the spoils of war. George Soros stands as one person who has always been and will always be and shall be until the end a man who sponsors any type of chaos, who does not follow which type of chaos he is sponsoring, as long as it is chaos that can topple a person he hates in Africa. Many African countries are undergoing this pressure this tension, especially those that are conducting elections and whose timetable for elections seem to be coming in the near future. As a result of that, Africa stands warned, and Africa must stand on alert about the external forces that want to dismember this continent and create heavens of war, create insecurity, create mirage peace that Africans have fought after 66 years of gaining political independence. It is therefore my submission that most African countries, if they don't look at what George Soros is doing, we might have a shocker one morning, one by one African country being pushed out and the leaders being pushed out of power. The events therefore in South Africa, as proved from these detailed undercover operations, they prove that George Soros indeed has a say in South African politics. And therefore, we want to urge Africans and African heads of state and their military and intelligence systems to be careful and watch on the amount of money that is being pumped into their economies, because some of the money could be George Soros money that will end up to bring public disorder in most of the African countries. Thank you very much, viewers.
Wewe kama unataka kuingiana na mambo ya ufisadi, yeah? Tutapigana na wewe. You can be my brother, you can be my sister, you can be my closest political ally, you can be whatever you are, but you are an enemy of the Republic of Kenya, and we will fight with you. Watu ambao wataendelea kucheza na mali ya umma, mali ya wananchi, wajue siku zao zimehesabiwa na ni shida watapata. Tumesema ya kwamba kutoka sasa hatutaki kusikia mtu akitetea mwenzake, ati mtu akiiba anasema ni kabila langu, ni dini yangu ambaye inadhulumiwa. Wewe uliiba peke yako, chukua msalaba yako peke yako. Tuungane ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba tumemaliza hiyo vita na wananchi wamepata haki yao. Au ni namna gani wenzangu?
We cannot be a country anymore where those who work hard are robbed of their profit by those who are too lazy to invest and produce. And this is why I am and will continue the fight against corruption to ensure that the fruits of our labor fill every heart with thanksgiving, as indeed stated in our national anthem. I invite all Kenyans to join us, to continue working with us in this most noble effort.
Welcome back, and we apologize for that. I'd like to take us through the remaining parts of the African news so that before our time ends, and we just looked at a few. Dr. Matanga had to leave and go take care of some things very urgently, so I'll just take you through the remainder of the time, which is about 25 minutes. And so we go to Rwanda, where Rwanda's President Paul Kagame has named Daniel Ngamije as the new Minister of Health, replacing Diane Gashumba, who was sacked 2 weeks ago over habitual growth, errors, and repeated leadership failures. That is according to President Paul Kagame. And Dr. Ngamije is a relatively new face in Rwandan politics, having previously worked for the World Health Organization as Rwanda's Program Director for Malaria and Neglected Tropical Diseases. And then we go to Nigeria, where Senator Shehu Sani said on Thursday that the acute poverty and begging culture in the north part of the country was as a result of social injustice and systematic failure of political leaders of the region. Sani, an activist and former senator representing Kaduna Central at the National Assembly, insisted that the poverty ravaging the region could not be addressed by legislation. The former lawmaker, in a statement on Thursday, said begging in the northern part of Nigeria is direct result of poverty, neglect, social, cultural and religious factors combined. And so now I understand why Nigerian government can never let go of the southern part of the country, and particularly Biafra. If this is a state, in the northern part of the country there, that is, laced with what this senator is calling the begging culture. And we also read that news from Tanzania, where now Vice President Constantino Chiwenga had been sent by army chiefs to convey. This is according to, Jonathan Moi had been sent by army chiefs to convey the message to vacationing Mnangagwa last month, and the 77-year-old is warm to a deal that secures protection for him and his family. This is according to some statements there. I think we looked at this story halfway, as Mr. Moi is claiming that Zimbabwe's military commanders have told President Emerson Mnangagwa to step down or risk another coup. And now we see he's saying that Constantino Chiwenga, who is the vice president of Zimbabwe, had gone out to meet with some of these army officials. And of course, Mnangagwa came to power after Chiwenga, the then Zimbabwean Defense Forces commander, led a military coup that ousted long leader Robert Mugabe, who died on September 5th last year. And we go to Cameroon, although I've read this news, but let's just take a look at it. And a Cameroonian opposition leader who was jailed for 9 months for organizing and participating in an unauthorized protest he said he will organize more marches if need arises. Professor Maurice Kamto, chairman of the opposition Cameroon Renaissance Movement, was welcomed by a huge crowd of supporters in the country's economic hub, Douala, on Wednesday, following his return from a 1-month European American tour. Professor Kamto returns to the country at a time rights organizations have demanded investigations over the February 14th killings in the English-speaking regions. More than 32 people, most of them children and women, were killed in a village in the northeastern part of Cameroon, and that is the Ambazonia region. And also now we see that the African Union says it plans to send 3,000 troops to the Sahel, where international and regional forces are struggling to contain Islamist militants. The head of the AU's Peace and Security Commission, Smail Chergui, told the AFP news agency that the deployment would last for 6 months. It is unclear which countries will provide troops or who will fund the operation. 1,000 of regional troops, French and US soldiers and a UN intervention force have been unable to contain a myriad of Islamist groups striking terror across the Sahel. And of course, in South Sudan, the U.S. State Department says it is too early to consider lifting arms sanctions imposed on South Sudan, even though the leaders formed a unity government this month. This came after regional leaders and President Salva Kiir called for lifting of sanctions against individuals. Last week, some regional leaders have echoed calls to lift sanctions against South Sudan leaders to enable full implementation of the peace deal. 2 weeks ago, President Salva Kiir called on member countries of the African Union to help in lifting U.S. sanctions against South Sudan's leaders. This came after Trump administration sanctioned Vice President Ban Ndeng Gai. And staying with South Sudan, the army has allegedly released 15 child soldiers who have been in the custody of South Sudan United Front since August 2019. The children were captured by the SSPDF last year during a fight between the government and forces of the ex-army chief staff Paul Malong. The 15 children, who had spent about 6 months associating with the armed group, were handed over to the Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Commission, or DDR, on Wednesday. The boys were released in the presence of the DDR and UNICEF in Juba. Speaking at Giada military garrison, the chief of ground operation at the military headquarters advised the children against rejoining any armed groups. you don't want these children. These children require some rehabilitation because they have interacted and be part of and associated with this armed groups for 6 months. So you don't want them. These are people who think differently now. So what now requires to be done there is rehabilitate them and make sure you take them through a process that will help them think differently. And we see that the United States warned on Thursday of a possible terrorist attack on a hotel in Nairobi, Kenya. The U.S. Embassy in Nairobi said terrorist groups may be plotting an attack against a major hotel in the capital. The embassy did not disclose the name of the hotel, but said it is believed to be a hotel popular with tourists and business travelers. The embassy urged hotel visitors in the area to be more aware of their surroundings, plan for emergency evacuations, and monitor local media reports. Al-Shabaab, an Islamist group linked to Al-Qaeda, has carried out a series of attacks in Kenya for the last couple of years. And we go to South Africa, and South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has ordered the repatriation of some 132 South Africans living in China's Wuhan city, the center of the coronavirus outbreak. The decision was announced on Thursday following a cabinet meeting and after requests from families of South Africans living in the city. The President's office said no time frame for the repatriation was given, but the government said that 132 citizens out of the total 199 South Africans living there had requested to be returned home. So that is the latest there from the continent. Thank you. A very good afternoon to you. I know for some of you it is good morning wherever you're watching us from. So that's news from Nigeria, where Senator Shehu Sani said yesterday that the acute poverty and begging culture in the north part of Nigeria was as a result of social injustice and the systematic failure of political leaders of the region. And he is an activist and also a former senator representing Kaduna Central at the National Assembly. He also insisted that the poverty raging the region could not be addressed by legislation. And of course, the former lawmaker in a statement yesterday said that the begging in the northern part of Nigeria is a direct result of poverty, neglect, social, cultural, and religious factors combined. I don't know, except for the fact that I know it is the northerners, especially the Fulani from the north, who there have been some proof that have very aggressive with other tribes, especially targeting the people from the south, and that is the Igbo, in particularly the Biafrans. And so is it because there's nothing much in the north? And I know Biafrans, when we have this conversation here, you're normally very adamant as to the reason why our president, of Nigeria, Mr. Muhammadu Buhari, cannot really allow, or even the previous governments cannot really allow Biafra to become a country. And that is because it appears to be, the part of the country there that is rich in certain things. And systems seems to be working there, and also it seems to be the place where it's quite rich in certain things, and the weather appears to be good, because when you see compared to the north there, the pastoralists and their way of life, I don't think the weather, the atmosphere there could be much better. So now we see this senator coming in and saying that there's a lot of poverty in the north. That could explain why we have, the Islamist group, the Boko Haram really thrive there at the north, because if, there has been a systematic failure of political leaders of the region, also social injustice. These are some of the things that makes the young people very susceptible to even finding, this extremist group attractive, because when they feel that the government of the day is not addressing addressing their needs. The government of the day does not have them in mind. They feel neglected. So it's easy. People like this who are in a state of despondence, it's easy to really convince them to join in these groups like Boko Haram. And so the acute poverty and the begging culture, this is just how this senator is describing the situation in northern Nigeria, and I think something needs to be done, and that is why there are a lot of younger people who are willing to join even Boko Haram from the northern part of the country because of the factors like this. And now what I'm asking is, what has the government of Nigeria done? What are they planning to do to address some of these driving factors that now has made more people to be recruited into, an extremist group like Boko Haram? And what are they planning to do? And even the young people who are coming out of Boko Haram, what they're calling them, the repentance, what are some of the things that they're planning to do? Because I was seeing that bill, and we've been talking about it here for some time now. It's really, that is not... it's not a long-term solution to some of these problems here that have been expressed by Senator Shehu Sani, who once represented the Kaduna Central at the National Assembly. So perhaps he has an understanding of what is really happening there. So he's coming from a place of information, expressing this very strong sentiments. So I think President Buhari, I just don't know if he's even willing and ready to make sure that a change comes. And the young people who feel that they're not represented, the young people who feel the government is not working for them, and so they find these criminal activities to be very attractive. They need to find a way to curb that, and they need to address some of these matters here that this Senator, Mr. Shehu Sani, has raised that I think are of grave concern. And also we've seen in Cameroon, opposition leader who was jailed for 9 months. Remember Maurice Kamto there in... Cameroon was jailed for 9 months in 2018 after he was protesting the elections there that were not free and fair. And so he was jailed for 9 months. He's been away touring Europe and the US. That explains why we've seen some countries there come out and castigate President Paul Biya. And so he just came back and he said now he's willing and is able to organize for marches. He's able to organize for protests there in Cameroon. And so he's back. So he was received by a huge crowd on Wednesday there at the airport, Douala, at the airport, after returning from a 1 month European and America tour. So I don't know if political activities there in Cameroon will be intensified. And it's very interesting that he was not in the country when the parliamentary elections and the other elections was happening. Remember that happened on the 9th of February. So I don't know if his party participated. And we saw even yesterday while we were talking about the news, the Electoral Commission there has ordered for another election to be done in the Anglophone region because of the many things and factors that might cause the election not have been done in a manner that was satisfactory. And Ambazonians have come out and made it very clear. It does not matter how many times the Electoral Commission tries to carry out elections in the Anglophone regions. They're not interested and they will not be participating. So Maurice Kamto has come back and he's been lobbying the international community. So I don't know if that will change things there for Mr. Paul Biya, or will the things still remain the same. South Sudan. Now, the U.S. State Department says it's too early to consider lifting arms sanctions, and I agree. What South Sudan needs now is not more arms. What South Sudan needs now is more stability, the peace to be reassured, the army to come together and to be unified, and then the country can start moving forward and implementing some of the content in the peace, revitalized peace deal that was signed in 2018. So, yes, lifting the arms embargo right now is not something that the U.S. Should do, because why would South Sudan want more arms right now? For what? Who will they be fighting? Who does the government want to fight now in South Sudan? And the warring, groups have come together to rebuild the country. So let's just support the peace process. So the U.S. State Department came out and said it's still too early. We've seen leaders come out and call for these sanctions to be lifted and the arms embargo to be lifted. No, they lifted the sanctions in some of the leaders there, which they've not really, but we saw IGAD now saying that Mr. Riek Machar was free to move, and the sanctions that were put on him and the travel restrictions on IGAD countries was lifted because after signing the peace deal on Saturday. So that is good. But arms embargo should stay. We do not want any more arms coming to South Sudan. Not now. We need these leaders to go to the table, and we need them to implement the content in the peace deal so that this peace can be fully realized, and this signing of the peace deal on Saturday can really make sense to the people of South Sudan. But adding more arms in South Sudan, no. So the arms embargo stays. So for the first time, the US on this one. So, of course, regional leaders have been calling for these sanctions to be lifted, especially the sanctions that have been put on certain individuals, the targeted sanctions. And we know one of the vice presidents there is the latest one to be sanctioned a couple of weeks ago, Vice President Taban Ndeng, a guy who I think is on the side of President Salva Kiir. And he was cited as one of the personalities that are defeating the peace process there in South Sudan, but we're hoping that with the signing of the peace deal, then perhaps a change might come to South Sudan. Also, this matter of recruiting child soldiers, come on now, South Sudanese, that has really messed a lot of lives of young people from that country. And there have been reports last year that we were reading that were very worrying, that the militants are recruiting by force young people to join these militant groups. And so this is something that South Sudan leadership has to really deal with and has to make sure that does not continue to happen. It violates. You mess they're messing very many young people's lives, and this is unacceptable. So this is something that South Sudan's government and leadership needs to address, and really needs to put measures in place to ensure that children are not recruited as child soldiers. I've had horrifying stories about now young adults who are recruited as child soldiers. It is not something that you get over. They're disturbed, they're messed up for the rest of their lives, and their stories are horrifying. And so this is something that should not be encouraged. This is something that the government should now deal with henceforth moving forward, and make sure that it does not happen. Children are not recruited into the army, period, or any militant group, period. And the government should work to safeguard the children of South Sudan against such illegal recruitments. Thank you so much. Today I'll leave early because of certain unavoidable circumstances. But I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for engaging with us. I was here with Dr. Matanga earlier, but he left to take care of some urgent matters. And so thank you so much. And Emmanuel Malual, good afternoon to you. Mobutu, thank you. Roshni Sahu, you're saying good morning. Can David, good afternoon. Jam Alois, you're saying you're watching from Amberland. Christopher Ibekwa, you're saying Biafra is loading. Thank you. Ibekwe, is it Ibekwe? All right, thank you so much. George Agostino, you're saying Juba belongs to you. All right. And John Nwaliaku, you're saying we are Jewish state in Africa. God bless Biafra. All right. There you go. So I'll see you here on Sunday for another edition of Africa Showdown. But for now, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.